The news day continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Bangko Sentral kept benchmark interest rates unchanged for a second straight meeting on Thursday. The Monetary Board maintained its overnight reverse repurchase rate at 6.25%. Interest rates on the overnight deposit and lending facilities were also kept at 5.75% and 6.75% respectively. BSP Governor Felipe Medalla said the pause will allow the central bank to further assess how inflation and domestic demand responded to their tightening. Despite easing inflation, however, Medalla said it may take some time before the central bank cuts rates. Medalla says he would personally prefer to see inflation below 4% for 2 months before the BSP even considers policy easing. Some lawmakers weighed in on the issue surrounding the corrected Maharlika Investment Fund bill. Senator Loren Legarda claimed that there were no rules violated with the Senate Majority Block's Viber discussions before Senate President Mig Zubiri signed the bill. She added that what's important is that the signed bill is faithful to the transcript of its interpellation. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel condemned what he called the tampering of Maharlika bill. He said since the bill was changed without proper plenary authority, its integrity and constitutionality are now in question. With this, Pimentel calls on President Bongbong Marcos to veto the bill, saying it needs more time to be studied. For Senator Risa Hontiveros, the urging for the bill's quick passage led to the chaotic circumstances surrounding it. As to its constitutionality, Hontiveros said that's for experts to determine. Even presidential sister and Senator Amy Marcos admitted feeling that the bill was rushed. She also said that there were many things in the bill that didn't make sense to her. Cebu Pacific has issued, quote, refined policies to compensate customers in cases of flight cancellations and delays. For flight cancellations of 72 hours or more from departure, CEBPAC says it's offering passengers the options to rebook, to convert them to travel fund, or to ask for a refund. The same options are available if your flight is canceled within 72 hours from departure, plus the option to get a travel voucher. Now, if your flight is canceled within the day, Cebu Pacific promises free food and the option to move the flight to other carriers, but subject to availability. They also promise to provide hotel accommodation and transportation allowance if the rebooked flight falls on a different day. But to be clear, you'll only get the hotel provision if your flight was canceled on the day of departure. For delayed flights, Cebu Pacific is also offering the options for free rebooking, conversion to travel fund, and refund. Passengers are also promised to be given free food and the option to move the flight to other carriers, but depending on availability. If the flight is delayed for 4 hours, passengers will be given a one-way travel voucher. And if the flight is delayed for 6 hours, passengers will be given a round-trip voucher. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on The One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Some economists told the Philippine Star that the poor and middle-class segments of society will likely bear the brunt of the proposed tax on salt and junk food, as well as higher levy on sweetened beverages. Ateneo de Manila professor and economist Leonardo Lanzona have very price high elasticity, especially as they are targeted to the poor and middle-income groups. This means that demand may likely fall and unlikely increase collection for the needed tax revenues for socially oriented programs. Research and advocacy group Ibon Foundation, meanwhile, said that the supposed health benefits may not be achieved, given the lack of affordable alternatives and the low purchasing power of Filipinos. Ibon Foundation argues that revenues would be generated precisely because the DOF knows about the lack of alternatives and that even poor Filipino families would keep buying such foods. The Marcos administration recently announced that it will pursue a junk food and sweetened beverage tax in a bid to generate revenues while addressing diseases related to poor diet. Such a tax measure is seen to add some 76 billion pesos to state coffers and reduce consumption of junk food by 21%. Here to give us his take on the matter, we have with us on the program ING Bank Senior Economist Nicky Mapa. Good morning, Nicky, and thank you very much for joining us on One News Now. Yes, good morning, Nicky. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's go straight to the question. Some economists believe this measure may burden the low-income majority. Your thoughts on that take?
Well, I guess in anything, when you have higher taxes on in particular products, there will be, I guess, some pushback, and some segments, particularly people who purchase these items, might face some higher prices, and makes it a little more difficult for them to purchase these things. And I think if there would be some provisions in the law to help provide alternatives, I think that's the answer, and that's the key to solving this issue. The issues on hand is that we need fresh revenues, and secondly, we need to help improve our citizenry's diet requirements and needs, right? So if there could be at least some provision in that law that would set aside part of that 76 billion targeted collection to help provide alternatives, healthier alternatives, then perhaps that's one way we can move forward from this impasse.
Speaking of revenues, do you think the government will generate enough funds for this measure, or will demand for the products just drop?
Well, even at the best case scenario of 76 billion that they've rolled out, that's still very minuscule to the actual shortfall that we face every month. I mean, I know at this point, yes, fiscal consolidation should be targeted and chased. It's not. It's a very minuscule addition to the revenues that we have. So yes, I guess it's a way to improve state coffers, but at the same time, it's not gonna move the needle with regard to fiscal consolidation.
Other economists are also pushing for a wealth tax instead of imposing taxes on food targeted for the poor. Do you think this is more an ideal move?
I wouldn't be able to speak if that would be a better move, but I do know that we need to, push more for fiscal consolidation as a whole, whether it's through, as you mentioned, wealth taxes or fish consumption tax or the like. But the fact that our debt numbers, our debt metrics are not ideal at this point, I think any push to try to improve our fiscal situation would be welcome.
Well, with that, thank you very much for your time. Senior Economist Nicky Mapa, thank you again for joining us on One News Now this morning. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.